Hey everyone, welcome to the long-awaited PKing guide. And I know I said this I'd make one like 20 years ago. If you haven't seen my other one, don't bother. It's so outdated now that it's not even worthwhile. A lot has changed since, and this will hopefully cover everything new. This is a PKing guide for mains, assuming that you have vengeance and at least piety. Piety or turmoil, I recommend having at least piety. And this is a guide to show you how to PK, not how to make money off PKing, as there's no way to really make money off PKing, and you shouldn't come into PKing as if you're trying to make money. And also you should make sure that you have enough bank to lose before you start PKing, and you won't cry when you die and lose your rune set. So I recommend having anywhere from 1 to 5 mil to get started PKing, risking 200, 400k. And I think that's everything we need to cover, and I hope you really enjoy. I'm going to be working hard on this guide. Yeah, sit back, relax, have fun. Alright, if you haven't guessed already, this section will be about food. There shouldn't really be too much variation, and this should be a fairly simple idea. First, there is shark, which is your cheapest food. It heals 200. Your tuna potato will heal 220. It's in the middle, and rocktail heals 230, and it's capable of healing 100 over your current life points. I don't really use shark or tuna potato too much, but what I recommend is if you're risking lower amounts, like under 300k, I would use shark. If you're risking like a whip, or your low risk hybriding, I would use tuna potato. And if you're risking anything over 1 mil, I would just go ahead and use rocktail. And that's all your fish food, which will take up most of your inventory in PKing. They're all 1 bite. I recommend using only 1 bite. You shouldn't really use anything else. There's a few additions to the food section, one of them being Cinnamon Brew, which stacks very nicely with food in that you can eat both a food and a Cinnamon Brew at the same time, both of them healing, and you can get a food combo off that. And this is advantageous because you can heal faster than your opponent, because Shark Brew is faster than eating 2 sharks in a row. And Cinnamon Brew will also function as a defense potion. It's actually better than a super defense potion. So you don't even have to bring one, but instead you will need a restore potion because Cinnamon Brew does lower your stats. This should be common knowledge at this point to most of you. And the other thing is a Phoenix necklace, which isn't really used too much at over 110 combat. What it essentially does is when your life points drop below 20%, it will heal you 30%. So for me, being 990 life points, that's too difficult. If I was 900 life points and I go below 180, it would heal me up 270. And then it's instantly, but the only thing is you have to be wearing this. Phoenix necklace doesn't give any stats, so you're pretty much amuletless when you're wearing this, but that's no major loss. They're very useful for negating Dragon Claw specials, along with Dragon Dagger specials. Hey, welcome to, this is going to be equipment for rune set PKing, which doesn't really have too much variation in it, but at the same time you can say that it has a lot of variation. The first 5 things should be very standard throughout whatever you choose to PK, is that you should be using a rune set with a Nezi and a team cape. The team cape is very important. If you, it eliminates the need to right click, and most cape bonuses are either a fire cape or an arty cape, which are either minimal or not necessary. What the team cape does is when you and your opponent are wearing 2 different team capes, you can just left click on your opponent to attack, which can save a lot of time from switching weapons. So these 5 items should be standard. If you haven't watched my recoil vid, I highly recommend doing that. That will pretty much prove my point on why you should wear a recoil. The next option is your boots, which either are going to be rune boots or dragon boots. Climbing boots are obsolete now that rune boots actually have better stats than climbing boots and are cheaper. So the only reason you should be using climbing boots rather is that if you're a pure. The main difference in between rune and dragon boots, there's not too much of a statistical difference. It's like really minimal defense bonuses with 2 strength bonus. And really the only reason people wear dragon boots is for risk, and it's a lot easier to get a fight if you're wearing dragon boots. The difference between Barrow's gloves and rune gloves is their price mainly, rune gloves being 5k each, Barrow's gloves being 100k. The stats, again, aren't that different, and if you're just low-risk PKing, I recommend using rune gloves over Barrow's gloves, just because over the long period of time, there won't be that much of a difference in your stats. The next option is going to be your amulet, which it's either going to be a glory or a strength amulet. Let me compare these real quick. A glory is a lot better, but again, it's a rune set fight, which isn't going to break down into your equipment that much. It'll more break down onto your special attack. So, they're both very cheap at this point, so there's really no point in using, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. If you're not worried about money, I would just go with the glory, just because you're going to be more successful in the long run. The next option is, and probably the most important option, is either the Obby Shield or Dragon Defender difference. And it's very obvious right now that the Dragon Defender gives like a metric crap ton of attack bonuses, and this is like the cause of DDS Rambo specs. Like if you're using a Dragon Defender, you will like completely annihilate your opponent. Like you will hit so much, it will be like the most accurate weapon. Like regardless of what you're using, like you could be running there with like a bronze dagger, and if you're wielding a Dragon Defender, you will like destroy your opponent. But then again, you have the defensive side, and you will tank more specs if you're wearing an Obby Shield. And while the defense bonuses aren't that different, it does make a difference. And on top of the whole thing, Dragon Defenders are a bitch to get. So, I use a Obby Shield just because the amount of risk you're fighting when you're using a Dragon Defender is not that great. And you have this thing called soaking, which I'll talk more about later when into Hard PKing, which is very, very important, and a lot of people overlook this. Alright, so let me just put on what I normally use. I'm usually welfare, so I'll be using that setup. And you can interchange the items depending on what you're willing to risk. Now the next is like the 4 weapons you'll see throughout RuneSet PKing. The whip, which is cheap and you can lose a whip. It's like 400k, and the other ones you can't lose, just because that'd be stupid. You have the rapier, which is pretty much an overpowered whip. It hits like with soaking anywhere from 450 to 480 depending on what your opponent is using. So that will Rambo pretty hardcore. But and same with the longsword. Longsword is definitely underestimated in that you can easily combo out your opponent using Venge and a chaotic longsword. And it's a lot easier to switch to a special attack weapon with, just because it's slower and more powerful. But most people prefer the rapier just because they combo with it and aren't relying on a special weapon to KO. The big difference between the whip and the rapier, where I think the whip still has the advantage, is that when you're wearing a whip, you get a special bar. And let me run into the bank real quick and grab a special weapon to demonstrate the usefulness of it. Is that when you have a special bar, it is much, much easier to switch to your special attack weapon, and that it's just 2 clicks like that. If you're using a rapier, let me wield the rapier and put this over here, and you switch to the Karasi, you have to wait And while that's like, oh, that's so minimal, but it makes a big difference when you're relying on those 4-second differences. So, end of story. What should you be using? If you're a lazy PKer, I would use a rapier or a maul or a longsword. I would use a chaotic if you have one. Simply because it's going to get you more KOs without you doing anything. It'll just Rambo several times in a row for you. Wherein the whip will enable you to switch to a special weapon quickly, so if you're relying on a special weapon to KO and not pure combos, I would use the whip. I don't know if this really even applies to anyone out here, but those are the 4 main weapons, and your 4 options right here, your gloves, shield, glory, and dragon boots. I hope this helps. You can give me feedback if this doesn't, or if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them in the comment section below, or on Facebook or Twitter, or Google+.